Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, July 13th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It's been an issue full of confusion and controversy. And now, despite pushback from many parents, California will require masks for K through 12 schools. KPBS reporter Alexandra Rangel spoke with local school officials on how they plan to enforce masks on campus.
It's because you can't breathe or nothing in the mask.
Valdin Trujillo, a third grader at Zamorano Elementary Fine Arts Academy in the South Bay, isn't too happy about wearing a face mask to school, but he understands why it's required.
Today there were someone in positive of COVID here in the school, but they sanitize it.
California health officials are following the CDC on guidelines for schools. While students will not have to social distance, they will be required to wear masks. School districts can decide how to enforce the mask mandate.
Masking, is a very important mitigation strategy, to keep everybody safe.
With the Delta variant still spreading across the U.S., San Diego Unified School Board President Richard Barrera says he agrees with the state.
We're not out of the woods yet in this pandemic. And so we know that despite all of our best efforts to encourage vaccinations, we will still have, students on campus in the fall who will not be vaccinated.
Barrera says the district expects 90% of their students to return back to campus when school begins in August. 6,000 students in the district have been vaccinated, but Barrera says everyone will be required to wear a face mask.
And then other students, have been vaccinated and are not wearing masks. And now you're putting students in a really tough spot. We could see situations of bullying or harassment.
Mireya Noriega has 2 daughters in San Diego Unified. She thinks masks are the safest option.
Pues en realidad la mayoría de los papás que no.
She says parents who don't agree with the masking still have their children taking online classes. Barrera says online learning is an option for families who choose not to send their kids back to the classroom. The state plans to go back to reassess the mask mandate on November 1st. Alexandra Rangel, KPBS News.
San Diego County is going back to reporting COVID-19 case numbers daily following an increase in cases. Today, 349 cases were reported. It comes after the county yesterday reported 829 new cases since last Friday. That means the daily average nearly doubled over the weekend. There have also been 26 new hospitalizations and 1 death. Across the country, there is growing concern over the Delta variant, which is now the dominant strain of the coronavirus in the United States.
The bad news is the Delta variant is more infectious and it's more deadly if you were to get it and not be vaccinated. The good news is that if you get vaccinated, you're protected from dying from this variant.
Delta variant cases in the county have just about doubled since last Friday, with 107 confirmed. As of today, there could be even more, since not every positive test is sequenced to figure out the exact makeup of that virus. And for more information about vaccinations and where to get one, you can visit our website, kpbs.org. We've made it easy to find vaccines on the link on our homepage. A new UC San Diego study finds heat in cities disproportionately affects poor and minority communities. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson explains.
The paper analyzed more than 1,000 counties in the United States. It found that Black, Hispanic, and Asian neighborhoods experience significantly more heat than predominantly white neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods are typically more dense and have fewer trees. The difference was an average of 7 degrees Fahrenheit.
75% of people living in these cities live in these so-called urban heat islands. So really 75% of urban inhabitants experience this urban heat at day and at night.
The study in the journal Earth's Future found people pay for cooler urban locations, but the racial disparity remains even when neighborhoods have similar income levels.
Even when you adjust for income, so now say, I'm going to look at neighborhoods of different racial and ethnic composition that have the same income, average household income, then you still see this race and ethnicity gradient. So even when you're thinking about normalizing out incomes, right, sort of putting that bit equal, you still see this race gradient.
Another just published paper in the journal Environmental Research Letters expanded the study globally. It found people living in the world's cities typically have to deal with hotter conditions than surrounding rural areas. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Today, Governor Gavin Newsom signed the $100 billion California Comeback Plan to speed up the state's recovery from the pandemic. It was possible thanks to a record surplus of $80 billion.
We not only are enjoying record surpluses and record reserves, not only paying down a record amount of pension obligation, but we're also providing the biggest tax rebate in American history, $12 billion to literally 3/4 of all tax filers.
2 out of every 3 Californians will get stimulus checks of $600, while qualifying families with kids will get an extra $500. There's also an additional $1.5 billion in small business grants and over $5 billion to cover 100% of rent for low-income tenants and small landlords. More highlights include universal pre-K, free school lunches, and $2 billion for wildfire preparedness. It's something many of us don't think about. You grab your smart device or sit down at a computer and you've got a high-quality internet connection. But for many Californians, that kind of access is out of reach. KPBS reporter Joe Carroll has details on new legislation that would go a long way toward closing the gap.
There are 2 big reasons why millions of Californians don't have high-quality internet. Either they can't afford it or the infrastructure isn't there to provide it. But a new agreement between Governor Newsom and legislative leaders aims to fix that. To people in urban and rural areas, the agreement, if it becomes law, will be a game changer.
I've heard these conversations before. So what I'm looking for are investments.
San Diego native Barry Pollard is the CEO of the Urban Collaborative Project, a group that identifies disparities within the greater San Diego area and works on solutions. He says the new broadband bill is critical in closing the digital divide, helping families who are struggling.
That have 4 and 5 kids that are in school, and they have to take turns on the internet because they drop connection. That is real.
The new legislation would set aside more than $5 billion for the expansion of broadband, $3.25 billion to build out the lines, the so-called middle mile, and $2 billion for the last mile lines that will connect homes and businesses with local networks, $1 billion each for urban and rural communities. There is another sizable group that is underserved when it comes to broadband, that is seniors. Here at the Gary and Mary West Senior Wellness Center, the group serving seniors is making sure they're not forgotten.
There's been a huge digital divide for older adults that's just been exacerbated by the pandemic.
Serving Seniors President and CEO Paul Downey says a lot of seniors had to just sit at home during the pandemic. They didn't have the connectivity, the ability to stay in touch with family and friends. But there's another aspect that's especially important for seniors: their health.
It can also be cost-effective if we can convert a lot of older adults to being able to use telehealth for things that don't require an in-the-office visit with a physician.
The infrastructure that will provide connectivity is just part of this effort. The governor and legislative leaders say they're also committed to providing funding before the end of the year to help people pay for that access to today's high-speed internet. Joe Carroll, KPBS News.
Local restaurants were expecting an end today to temporary outdoor seating. The city was supposed to start fining those who did not comply with bringing their space up to code. But as KPBS reporter Melissa May tells us, those restaurants got a reprieve.
People are enjoying the summer after the pandemic with bonus seating in Parklets that many San Diego restaurants put up during restrictions.
This is San Diego, sitting outside, enjoying a glass of wine and enjoying great food.
San Diego's Little Italy neighborhood took full advantage of the concept and built some really nice outdoor dining spaces.
Having outdoor seating helps tremendously. It's literally a billboard on the sidewalk. When we have our food out, people walk by and they say, oh, that looks great, and they want to come in.
Vince Buslaki is the general manager at Nona in Little Italy, and their parklet cost about $10,000 to build.
Temporary outdoor business operation permits allowed restaurants to build parklets like these outside of their restaurants to accommodate for outdoor seating. The mayor's office just announced last night that they were extending their deadline to August 2nd for restaurants to restructure their parklets to be in compliance with state law and even safer for the public.
Today, July 13th, was the original deadline for restaurants to bring their outdoor dining parklets up to code. Business owners who did not comply could have faced up to a $10,000 fine.
We're lucky enough that we got this in the first place, so we kind of have to work with the city and the state to kind of see if it means cutting the roofs off and getting in compliance, and that's okay for a while, then we'll do what we have to.
With the new extension, restaurants have a little extra time to modify their parklets to fit within federal, state, and local fire codes. This includes removing permanent rooftops and moving the portion of their parklets that block red curbs, among other requirements.
We're on city property, so there's that gray area where who's liable, who's not liable. But all in all, we're thankful that the city allowed us to do this in the first place.
The restaurant industry is still trying to recover from the pandemic.
We've kind of rolled with the punches, we've been through a lot this last year, and so this is just another bump in the road that we just kind of have to handle and figure out which way to go with it.
The city of San Diego is working with business groups to help them bring their parklets up to code. The city says communication has already begun about the extension and future of parklets in San Diego. Melissa May, KPBS News.
Funeral services will be held next week for Father Joe Carroll. The Catholic priest who became an icon for his charitable services for the homeless died on Saturday at the age of 80 following a battle with diabetes. The service is scheduled to take place at St. Rita's Catholic Church in Lincoln Park on July 20th. Carroll was president and CEO of St. Vincent de Paul Village from 1982 until his retirement in 2011, after which the facility was renamed as Father Joe's Villages. Today marks 10 years since Rebecca Zahau died at the Spreckles Mansion in Coronado, and her family is still insisting she did not take her own life. The Zahau family's attorney filed a complaint yesterday asking the San Diego County Sheriff's Department to release documents from the investigation. The attorney says new evidence came to light during the wrongful death trial of Adam Shacknai in 2018. Months later, the Sheriff's Department said they would not reopen the death case after they say they found no evidence that Zahau died at another's hands.
We're concerned that what the sheriff did was lie to the public, make it appear like he was still working on this and looking into the case, when really he was telling his people, don't do it.
Jurors found Shacknai liable for Zahau's death, but he has always maintained his innocence. Our media partner KGTV did reach out to the Sheriff's Department for comment, but has not yet heard back. Fire season in California and the western U.S. is starting earlier and ending later each year. Currently, 67 large fires are burning across 12 states, scorching nearly 918,000 acres. Daryl Forges breaks down the troubling trend as severe drought remains in the forecast.
Relentless wildfires ravaging the western portion of the United States. In Spokane, Washington, the Snake River Complex wildfire taking priority.
Currently, as of today, the number one fire in the country across all of the whole U.S.
California has already seen more than 3 times as much land burned this year than the same period in 2020, when the state went on to record its worst fire season ever.
A shock.
The Beckworth Complex fire is the largest fire burning in California. All this partly caused by severe drought and the climate crisis.
I'm more worried about this wind. That fire can be on the other side of that mountain, and it could put embers down in the middle of this town and burn this town to the ground.
Firefighters describing the fire situation as the most extreme. The bootleg wildfire along Oregon and California has scorched more than 200,000 acres. If people don't evacuate, authorities in Klamath County, Oregon warn they could face citations or even arrests. Experts advising on protecting valuables.
I always recommend take your cell phone once a year, twice a year, walk through your house, video everything you have.
According to the National Interagency Fire Center, so far the United States has seen nearly 34,000 fires in 2021, the largest number of fires at this point of the year in the past decade. The agency also said that at a national level, an average of 87% of wildfires are human-caused and that most of these fires can be prevented. Daryl Forges, KPBS News.
The upper level high that's been with us here over the last couple of days is ever so slowly going to start to weaken, which means that the ridging pattern along with it will also therefore weaken. Coastal comfort in the form of some slightly cooler temperatures right along the coast, and we're going to get a little bit of moisture potentially later in the week. Earlier today, Los Angeles did record a little bit of rain, but unfortunately that didn't make it as far south as San Diego. For tonight, temperatures dropping off into the upper 60s in the metro with a little bit of cloud cover out there, some low-hanging clouds as you're waking up early on your Wednesday morning. 65 degrees over in Oceanside for tonight. Escondido getting down to 64. Ramona 61 degrees for that overnight low. We'll get into the same old pattern here on Wednesday. The heat remains locked in here for much of California out towards Nevada, and the scattered storms are still likely going to hang around in the most part in the Four Corners region. Some of that could move into southern portions here of California, but it looks like most of it's going to stay out of our hair, unfortunately, though we could certainly use a little bit of rain here. 77 degrees in Chula Vista for your high tomorrow. El Cajon getting up to 90 degrees. Same thing over in Vermona. Brago Springs still well up into the triple digits. And then Thursday and Friday, same pattern here. It could be just a little bit cooler. It's very warm, but still a little bit potentially cooler than where we have been over the last couple of days, and the storms get locked in here in the Four Corners region. Near the coast, temperatures not wavering a whole lot. We're going to be in the upper 70s through Thursday, after that falling back down into the mid 70s. Further inland, temperatures fall from close to 90 degrees on Wednesday back down into the low 80s by the time we roll around to this weekend. And those low hanging clouds break for some more sunshine this weekend as well. In the mountains, temperatures fall from the mid 70s back down into the low 70s before rebounding a little bit there for your Sunday. And in the desert, not a whole lot of change. Temperature is likely going to be up into the triple digits here over the next 5 to 7 days. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
The oppressive heat mixed with an ongoing drought is also leaving some in California without running water. Wells are now high and dry, leaving people unable to shower, to brush their teeth, or to cook. Stephanie Elam talked to some people feeling that impact.
There's 7 of us living in the house, and we've had no water for a month now.
For the Boylan family, the drought is hitting home.
You still walk over to brush your teeth and turn on the faucet, and then you realize, oh yeah, there's no water.
The lack of running water makes the simplest of routines challenging, especially as temperatures rise above 100 degrees.
Our neighbor, who has a house across the street with no one living in it, said we can use his hose out front to fill our water bucket.
All this because the well at their Clovis, California home literally ran dry, the result of years of underwhelming precipitation in the region.
It went from being sufficient to being gone overnight. Now you can move this because there's no water in it.
By a stroke of luck, the Boylans came across Self-Help Enterprises, which helps residents get the water they need.
It's a 2,500-gallon tank, and then we haul water weekly, and they can resume normal household activities.
The Boylans aren't the only ones in this predicament. Across the state's Central Valley, wells are drying out, drawing up demand. The family is on a 9-month waiting list to drill a new, deeper well.
How early during the year did the calls start to come in for the need for water?
40% more calls in March, and then April we were pretty much full into a drop.
In fact, California just recorded its lowest rainfall year since records began in 1895. And it's not just homeowners. Even towns are being forced to drill deeper to find water.
We all just expect to go up to the faucet, turn it on, and there's water. But when there isn't, it's a shock.
Frank Galavez lives in Teviston. He says in early June, 700 or so residents were left high and dry for about 2 weeks after the town's well failed. Now they are relying on these 4 massive above-ground tanks that get refilled daily. Each holds 10,000 gallons of crucial H2O in a district where only 1 of 3 wells is now functional. A quarter of America's food is produced here in the Central Valley, with 80% of California's water supply going to agriculture. So with the lack of rain, growers are relying heavily on groundwater pumped from across the region to irrigate their crops. While some worry that increased pumping could impact smaller wells, Galavez says the giant agriculture machine is a necessity.
We have to have the food. We have to have the work for our farm workers.
And this much dryness so early in the summer doesn't bode well.
We expect a lot more wells to go dry, both for communities and both for private wells.
As for Laurel Boylan, she was awash with emotions as the plumbers finally arrived with her tanks.
The tank installer called this morning. I busted out bawling. You telling me I'm going to have it today just was a little overwhelming.
What does that sound like to you?
It sounds like heaven. I can't even imagine we're actually going to be able to shower tonight. You take running water for granted. I'll never take it for granted again.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the fight to vote. Why Texas Democrats leave the state to block a restrictive new voting law. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The Defense Department says roughly 70% of the U.S. military has had at least 1 dose of coronavirus vaccine. A Pentagon spokesman said while the figure is encouraging, the military is still committed to encouraging troops to get vaccinated to, quote, the maximum degree. And the military is keeping a close eye on the Delta variant. Democrat will not appear next to Governor Gavin Newsom's name on the upcoming recall election ballot. Newsom sued his own Secretary of State to have his party affiliation appear on the ballot after his election attorney accidentally left it off in last year's filing. A Sacramento Superior Court judge denied the request, ruling that the circumstances do not justify an excuse from the deadline. The recall election is set for September 14th. San Diego will be lit up with the colors of the rainbow as Pride events ramp up. Mayor Todd Gloria, the city's first openly gay mayor, raised the rainbow flag last month at City Hall, and tonight he and other local leaders will take part in a special lighting ceremony at Balboa Park. San Diego Pride Director Fernando Lopez says there are plenty of in-person and virtual events happening through the weekend.
Some folks just aren't feeling safe and ready to come out yet. And with the Delta variant, that is super understandable. So we wanted to give folks as many options and opportunities as possible for as much as possible, as long as possible, and keep those events free and open to the public because we've all been through it this year and think folks are just ready to come back and connect.
The focus is on San Diego this week, but Pride events are expanding. Escondido will hold its first celebration on July 24th. Some sunny weather and warm waters are making San Diego beaches a popular place to be, not just for surfers, though, but for sharks, too. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne has more on the increase in shark sightings in Del Mar.
Kian Hoover has been surfing Del Mar beaches most of his life. When he was flying his drone over the Del Mar Ocean recently, he was surprised to see more than just the daily surfers.
But I flew the drone down past like 15th Street and immediately saw 2 juvenile white sharks.
So what does a curious 19-year-old do?
Yeah, we're going to go over. We're going to take the stand-up paddle boards and we're going to go check out the sharks. And I was like, all right, yeah, I'm down. That sounds fun.
This is the GoPro footage Hoover and his cousins got while in the water last week.
And as we kept paddling around, sure enough, there just more and more kept going by until we saw about 7 or 8 total.
Hoover said he didn't feel scared when he encountered the sharks.
I kind of knew that the smaller juvenile sharks are just less aggressive in general. They're kind of after smaller prey like stingray and fish. But yeah, it was an experience for sure.
Dr. Chris Lowe is the director of the Shark Lab at Cal State Long Beach.
The shark numbers have been increasing along the California coast for the last 20 years because we protected them. And commercial fishing is better managed. So as a result, shark populations are coming back, particularly white sharks, which is kind of cool.
He said a group of juvenile white sharks have made Del Mar their home.
So what we're learning is that these sharks, especially these young ones, have favorite beaches, and they pick a beach any given summer, and they're there, and they will be there day and night for months at a time. And then something changes, maybe the water temperature drops, and then they'll move to another favorite beach.
Dr. Lowe has partnered with Del Mar lifeguards to tag and track the activity of the sharks for research.
And we have no idea where they go. So now that we're tagging baby sharks with transmitters that last 10 years, we're starting to figure that out.
Dr. Lowe says he hears of shark sightings almost every day.
Our beaches are awesome nursery for white sharks, but they also happen to be our playground. So we have to learn to share the playground.
Dr. Lowe thinks that the sharks are going to stick around because they've grown fond of the environment. So he suggests that if you're going to be going out to the beach or surfing, to always be respectful if you do encounter them, and also try to go out in groups. In Del Mar, Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. I hope you have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.